Ahoy and welcome to this Narrowboat adventure. Happy New Year! I've not got any more introductions I pre-filmed with the snow. I'm sorry there were so many of them, but it was so beautiful I couldn't resist. You may see this topple a few times. I bought 3 of them. I love them. I feel like a sailor. So anyway, I'll get on to the proper video now, shall I? This video is for people who've just bought a boat, new boaters who don't know anything, basically. And it's a few tips on how to not kill yourself, sink or lose your boat. So we'll start with not killing yourself by accident, which was my biggest fear as a new boater. All I could think about was, oh my gosh, I'm going to accidentally kill myself by doing something wrong. One of the biggest ones is people not understanding the things that are safe to use to heat your boat and the things that are not safe. So some people that I've heard of have heated their boat using their oven and just opened it up. Of course that lets loads of carbon monoxide into your boat and doesn't give it a way to escape. I've also heard of people just buying heaters that are supposed to be used outside and using them in their boat. Again, there's nowhere for carbon monoxide to escape, and so quite quickly you're going to find yourself with carbon monoxide poisoning. The other reason that carbon monoxide poisoning can be a problem for boaters is if their stove maintenance is not up to date. So it's important at least once a year to give your stove a good check over. There are companies that you can pay to do this, so one of the things you need to check is so all of the joining parts, you need to make sure the seals are still in good working order. There's a rope, a fire rope on the inside of the door to make sure that that is still there and attached, and also to make sure that the glass of your stove is still intact and keep it clean and looked after so that it's unlikely to become broken. And also making sure that you shut the door properly when you've finished making your fire, because obviously anything like that can bring smoke back into the boat, bring carbon monoxide back into the boat, and those are things you don't want. The good thing about boats, for the most part, is a lot of them have quite drafty windows, and with the boat safety certificate, there's a lot of things in place to make sure that your boat has lots of ventilation, which is very important to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. So don't go covering up your ventilation in the winter, because it is very important. Just get your fire hotter. Yeah, so the signs of carbon monoxide poisoning, the main ones that I know about are dizziness, sleepiness, confusion, nausea. Yeah, I think that's all of them that I can think of. Next thing to talk about is falling in. If you fall in and your boat is moving, you're going to want to swim away from your boat. You do not want to get caught in the propeller. You don't want to hurt yourself that way. It would be very bad. If you fall in the winter, it can be really bad, because often the cold of the water can really take your breath away and make it difficult to scream for help. So if that happens, it's very important for you to knock on the side of boats. And if you hear splashing on the outside of your boat, please go and check, especially at this time of year. One thing, we have an emergency ladder on the outside of our boat. Now I think the one we've got is actually designed for yachts, but it works just fine. It's got a rope. If you pull the rope, a ladder plops down, and it's a very simple piece of kit. It's not terribly expensive, and it's great for peace of mind if it's something that worries you. Next, I want to talk about lock safety. It's very important to take your time, not run, and wear good grippy shoes around locks, especially because it's very, very dangerous if you fall into a lock. The other thing, of course, that I actually have been guilty of myself is it's important to make sure that when you're using a lock, you don't leave the windlass on the lock mechanism without your hand on it. Take it off if you're not using it, because if, for instance, the paddle falls, that can spin your windlass around and fly it out, and it could hit somebody, and that would be very dangerous indeed. And just keeping an eye on the boat is important, because the thing you want to be able to do is to quickly and calmly fix any problems before they get to a point where you're going to panic. The last couple of things I've got is weed hatch. A couple of times recently this year we've heard about people having problems where their weed hatch hasn't been properly reattached, and when you start the boat and that's the case, you can literally sink the boat in about half an hour because the water comes straight in. So it's very important to keep a good eye on your weed hatch. And tunnels, watch your heads, don't stand on the gunnels. In the olden days, that would be the main way that people would die narrowboating, because they'd fall between the boat and the side of the tunnel and they'd get crushed. It's very unfortunate, but very avoidable if you just stick to the stern or the bow and make sure that your head's nice and low and you don't hit your head on the way in. Now, less morbidity, and on to not sinking or losing your boat. So it's very important with a narrowboat not to ignore problems. If you have your water pump going off at random intervals when you're not using the tap, if your bilge pump is going off randomly, if you find water in your honesty hatch, these are things you need to get sorted out. If your engine bay has a lot of water in it and it's submerging the engine, don't start the engine. There's lots of things you can do. You can put rice into tights and just put that in the engine bay and it will suck up the water. And just as easily, take a few hours, use a sponge and a jug. Like, there are plenty of ways to sort this out, but it's very important that you do sort it out, because you don't want to sink your boat. The same with engine care, actually. If lights start coming on, if it smells funny, if there's smoke coming out of the exhaust, if there's a funny noise, then all of these things are things that you should be checking. There's lots of regular engine care things you should be doing. If you don't really know where to start, I would search wobble checks online. I'm hoping to make a video about this soon, but I do wobble checks every single time before I start the boat, because it's the sort of thing that is so easy. It takes like 5 seconds and it just really puts you in such a better position to not have breakdowns. And when you do have breakdowns, you know these are the things you can start checking, and then at least when you phone an engineer, it's not going to be something really simple and avoidable. Oh, when you're in a lock, especially if you're going down in the lock, don't tie a knot on the bollard. So if this is the bollard and my fingers are the boat, what I always do is I tie it so the rope going to the boat is on top and the rope going to me is on the underneath, because that gives you the ability, if the boat is, for instance, getting higher, you can tighten it up so that it stays nice and close to the edge, or if it's getting lower, you can loosen it. And as soon as you want the power to stop the boat, you just pull it up, and that is enough. And it's not then in a position where you might have your boat stuck, because obviously if it's on a knot and it starts going down, the knot's going to get tighter and tighter, and you see things where either boats end up hanging off of their centre line, or more likely the metal that holds the centre line rips out of the boat, and those are things you want to avoid. Speaking of centre lines, it's very important to have a centre line. I've seen some new boaters recently who didn't have a centre line at all. They had it, they just hadn't put it on their boat. Really important, centre line should be on the centre of the boat and then coming down to the very back of the boat, so that you can grab it and jump off from the driving position. Yeah, so that's really important. And most people would say that it's important to have a centre line that doesn't reach quite as far as the propeller, because it can get wrapped around the propeller if it falls in, if it's too long, and you'd like to avoid that generally too. I suppose the last thing that there has been a lot of this year that I should mention is it's very important in a lock to not let your boat get too far forward or too far back. Lots of people take avoiding the seal to the extreme, and then their boats get caught in the lock door, and that pushes the boat nose under, or it pushes the back of the boat down as the water changes. We've seen quite a few boats sinking in locks because of this, so just try and keep your boat doors away from the ends of the lock. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this hasn't been too depressing, but I think it's important to talk about these things, because there are a lot of things that new boaters don't know about, and there are so many dangers to boating that people don't talk about that much. And I think it's important to make these things things that you're aware of so you can avoid making these mistakes if you are a new boater. I will also be making hopefully a boat on engine care soon, but as I say, if you want to know more, I would just search wobble checks to start with. That's a great place to start. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day. If you'd like to join us again on this narrowboat adventure, you can click subscribe in the description. If you have anything that I've missed out of this video that you want to add, tell me in the description. I may well make a part 2. And I'd just like to say a great big thank you to David Doherty for being one of my Patreons. You rule. Thank you very much, David. You've helped make these videos what they are. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And, oh, you can check me out on Facebook if you prefer there, this narrowboat adventure. Links to everything in the description. And have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye!